What's going on, red shirts?
What's going on, bub?
Hey, Sherry. How you doing, mon ami? All right. We are here to review X-Men 97 Season 1 as it just finished today. So we watched the finale. I'm guessing you watched it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I did.
That's what I figured because I saw because I was up, and responded to Patrick. I was about the Humble Bundle thing, and then you were still up. So I was like, oh, he's watched X-Men now. So now I definitely have to watch it when I first wake up. So we're going to just basically get right into it because, boy, did that finale, especially the way it ended, and yeah, we wanted to talk about the characters first a little bit before we get into the story. We'll talk about the main characters first. Obviously, we've got your main cast of characters, as you can see above us. We got, we'll start with Jubilee there, Gambit, Wolverine, Storm, Bishop, next to Beast, and then Rogue behind Gambit, of course, Cyclops. And then there with the ponytail is Jean Grey. And then next to Jean Grey is actually the new version of Morph, who they've made more of a binary character since he can turn into anybody. Or I guess they can turn into anybody. They don't really still say him. And the good thing is they still refer to him as male, but just the way he looks is binary. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But so that's the main characters. I'm not disappointed, obviously. Same main cast characters that we got in X-Men 92. Bishop was around for a bunch of it. So I include him in the main characters. Not shown who was around for a bunch of Cable, who shows up a lot in X-Men 97 as well, who, as you know from the comics, is Nathan Summers, who is Cyclops' son. We'll get into that when we get to the story a little more. And then Magneto, of course, not pictured, and Xavier not pictured. Two more main characters who was very happy to see Xavier still alive, obviously, and still on the show. What of those main characters before we get into the villains? What's your thoughts? Any favorites?
I mean, it's such a fantastic group since it continues from the original 90s show, and having so many of those same voice actors come back, it just really helped it feel, like a great continuation. It could definitely tell there's that time gap, but it made you feel right at home with being back with those characters. And it's such a great group of characters that a lot of people grew up with. Mm-hmm. And it was a great return for a lot of those characters, or for all those characters. I think everybody at some point had their kind of big moment to shine. And so I think they did a great job at balancing all the characters. Everybody has that moment to shine. So if you're a fan of any of these characters, you're going to have a moment that you're happy with them. And yeah,
I think it was really cool to see how much more they did with Morph this time.
Oh, they did. That was such a it's kind
pleasant surprise, I'd say.
I almost want to call him a standout, but like I said, everybody stands out in their own way. It's kind of hard to pick an absolute favorite. Now, for me, I'm biased because I love Wolverine, and so
he's one of my favorites. Mutant, they say two favorites, Wolverine and Gambit, are my two.
Sure. And so, Cyclops has really stood out to me this season. With him being a character I've been appreciating more and more. But I think Morph, what they do with Morph, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but they incorporate some really cool things with Morph and what he does with his powers.
Yes.
And so
I think that they did that with all the characters too. We saw power usage that we hadn't seen before in X-Men 92. So that was really cool to see the evolution of powers, for sure. Now, speaking of evolution of powers, let's talk about Bastion for a little bit.
It's very
Very interesting villain. Everyone thought before the show aired it was going to be Sinister as the main villain.
I mean, that's what they set up for that first half.
Well, yeah. It's and when talking about Sinister, we can't forget to talk about Madeline Pryor, who's the Jean Grey clone. Who that whole story got intertwined into it, which was fantastic and mind blowing to a lot of us fans who grew up with it. Because now we had to think about when did they switch, and they did that the whole season. You never knew, and they still kept it a secret. We have no idea. But Bastion to me is a very interesting character because it's the future of what we have seen in every X-Men iteration happening in the present. And so that led to a lot of craziness, that jaw-dropping to me, even for some of the scenes and not even scenes that necessarily he was in, but that he was the mastermind of. So, well done. I've done some reading and seeing that people are possibly saying that they changed his origin from the comics. People are also saying that that little Easter egg of Sinister saying you used to be just one of those villains of the X-Men means that he's someone else, like Sabretooth's son, turned into a cybernetic Bastion. But who knows? We'll probably find that out more either with companion comics, or maybe they'll delve deeper into it. If they, because Bastion's a character that doesn't really die because of his the aspect of him that the multiversal time travel stuff with the war in the future and stuff. So I think I was very happy that it wasn't just Sinister as the villain. I love Mr. Sinister, don't get me wrong, but they did a lot of him and enough of him in X-Men 92 that it was a nice fresh breath of fresh air for another villain to take center stage.
I think it was a good way of how they did. A lot of people use the term bait and switch in a bad way, but I think this is a way where it did actually in a really good way.
Yeah,
because you began with instantly pulling in fans of the original show by having the classic cast of the X-Men, having them fight against sort of familiar threats, first stuff being like against Sentinels, and then you get into their adaptation of the Inferno arc with Sinister, and then that from there it builds into eventually leading up to Bastion, and that's, I think, a really great lead in, sort of a really good flow of just a story there of being able to go from one threat to another there.
The flow was really good for sure of how it went from one episode to the next and one story arc to the next. Definitely. That was very impressive. I was very happy that they didn't ruin X-Men 92 with X-Men 97. They did it justice. It was done right. People are upset that it's going to be a new showrunner next time, but I think as long as you get the right kind of person, it's that it was a fan of the original, a fan of this, you're not going to have an issue. And we already know they're working on the animation for season 2, and it's already been ordered for season 3, I believe.
They're writing season 3.
Yeah, they're writing season 3 now. So fantastic villains. I'm just trying to think of all the any other villains we had that weren't just cameos, and really it was the big ones were Bastion, Sinister, and then Magneto a little bit, for sure.
Sentinels, but
Sentinels. And I mean, I guess we could talk about the human Sentinels for a second. That's like the Nimrod betas, essentially, or alphas, I guess, at this point is what they were. So that was really cool to see that they actually took Nimrod, and they actually showed Nimrod at one point for a hot second in the giant Sentinel that attacked Genosha, I believe it was.
Would definitely love to have him in a future season.
Absolutely.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So speaking of all these characters, I guess we should talk about the story now, because from the very beginning, I was it hooked me. Again, like you said, it felt like X-Men 92. The animation, the style, the writing, just the flow. It felt like it just was a sequel, perfect sequel. And from the Cable, the birth of Cable, to let's start there. I mean, for me, the whole Cable thing. Yeah, the first episode dealing with the Professor's fallout, fighting the Sentinels again was a nice, like, welcome back, here, But then I think things really picked up starting in episode 2 when she had the baby, and you find out that it's, it is Cable, but then you find out that, it doesn't grasp me until I hear the name. Once they said Nathaniel Summers, I was like, oh my God, it's Cable. That's right. Whoops, I forgot. But great first couple episodes to get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they did a great job with that first episode. Gets you pulled in. I think I haven't heard a lot of people I haven't heard a lot of perspective from just watching 97 and not have watched a 90s show, but it's a great way to definitely pull back in from the other show going into it. But I definitely think it would have. I mean, it's kind of hard to like say, because since we both watched all the 90s show, but I'd imagine that would be a fine starting place too, to just jump in from that moment too, especially when you get that classic threat Sentinels, very much parallel to how the original show began too. And so that was really cool. And yeah, no, I definitely agree. Second episode is when it started doing more of its, getting into more of laying the seeds of like more of what this whole overall plot is, getting more into like what the season is. And I think it did a really good job of laying seeds throughout the whole show and growing from those throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I think from the Cable arc of getting Cable to the future with Bishop to transitioning into Magneto, the Magneto storyline, to then Genosha, it flowed really well. And then, of course, Genosha is when it all blew up. Literally is when it all blew up. But the Genosha was so cool because, we're going to talk about cameos in a little bit, but that's where you really got to see all the really cool ass cameos really start to show up. Was Genosha, because that's where they could stick all the random mutants that they wanted to stick, like Dazzler, for example.
Yeah, we got a lot of it's a bit, but yeah, Genosha was what a huge episode too, right? Like, I guess like that was a great way for a mid-season. They didn't. I want to call it a mid-season finale. Like, they didn't exactly treat it as like how shows do nowadays for mid-season finale, but like it served as a great middle point with thing of like, holy crap, like if this was to air on TV, it'd be like the perfect place there to be like, holy crap, if they were to take a break there. And it was such a
glad they didn't.
Wow episode right there. It was such just like a wow episode there.
It was the climax. It is the climax of the story for well, it was one of the climaxes of the story.
One of them, sure.
Yeah.
was a roller coaster of a story.
It was a
that's for
roller
sure,
coaster of a
this is
story,
such a huge
Genosha.
point there.
But I love what they did is they had this huge, giant Genosha story, but they still kept you interested in the Storm side story.
That was a very, that's the thing that I'm kind of like most, I guess, question is I feel like they split up that story in a very interesting way.
Mhm.
Because we have, we skipped over episode 3 when we first got Madeline Pryor, which I know we talked a little bit about her character, but that was really cool having that there, and kind of having such a big Sinister based story there was great.
Mhm.
But then we jump ahead, and then we have this first half of being a Jubilee story with Mojo, which I loved having Mojo back
Yes, that was
Mojo
a
was
great
awesome.
side story episode,
yeah.
just random.
But then having the second half being Storm, and then you don't go to Storm till 2 episodes later. Now, I like how they tied back in Storm's story after from the Genosha episode, because it was very important there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
at the same time, I feel like it's still a weird split of like, here's a third of the story, and then you get
It was. I was expecting more Storm the next episode for sure.
Right.
Absolutely. But again, not like we didn't keep watching, and that's the thing.
Right.
Like we can nitpick all we want, but
Right.
they did a decent job of it because, again, they're shorter episodes. So I mean, it's like it's
30-minute episodes,
30 to 40-minute episodes. Yeah. So for animation, they're longer episodes, but
bit, yeah.
but still, there's only so much you can fit in, and you want to get everything in the story. And when you are watching 30 minutes, it's not like, oh, you're not pissed off that they didn't go back to Storm right away, because you're like, oh, in a week they'll probably go back to Storm. Now, if they had waited another episode, then we would have probably had a problem here. But then that would have shown some flaws in the show, and I would have been a little worried about where they were going. But they didn't have flaws in the show, really.
No, not at all.
So, and then once Genosha happens, we find out the real villain is Bastion and not Sinister. And we get this whole thing of Bastion basically, and then basically telling the world that Xavier's alive. And then once everyone knows that Xavier's alive, getting everyone to turn on mutants. Then, of course, Rogue going rogue, because rest in peace.
Oh yeah, what a huge thing there.
We glazed over it because it's hard to talk about, man. But in Genosha, Gambit did die. The name's Gambit. Remember it.
Yeah.
The name's Gambit, mon ami. Remember it.
Right.
That's what he says, and then he blows up and destroys the master mold, which amazing moment. But then like an amazing emotional moment for Rogue that sets her off the rails. And this is where things get even crazier, because we find out that the X-Men finally find out that it's Bastion and not Sinister, and not just Trask and Gyrick, and it's this Bastion, and we learn about Bastion's history a little bit, and that he can talk to the Sentinels, and they try and go figure out, like, there's a location, and it actually looks like a familiar house where Magneto was being held after Genosha, in the basement, I believe, of that house. And they meet the mother of Bastion, who is actually a human Sentinel.
That's very interesting. And then you get the reveal of all those human Sentinels and
everything.
That
was
just
nuts.
Like, well, then, absolutely crazy.
Absolutely crazy. I know we've missed a bunch, but we're going to get into the cameos part. So that's why I didn't really talk too much about Rogue going rogue, because there's a bunch of cameos there that I don't want to spoil about till we get to our little cameo section. And we're, this is just a short overview and analysis. We're not trying to get too in-depth this.
Sure.
Otherwise, we might as well do a live stream. But Rogue goes rogue, kills Trask, or what she thought she did, and Trask turns into a human sentinel, and there's all these human sentinels for the next couple episodes, and then Magneto go crazy, and Magneto turns off all the power in the world.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Magneto go crazy because the UN woman set him free.
Right. That's true. Lots of crazy stuff there. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to what I've said?
No, not so far. I mean, not much more, because like just after that we have it finishes up the whole Bastion arc of them taking them all together. You know, he gets this big special, like, I don't know, I got like a little bit of Iron Man vibes, but what I thought of even more from him was, you remember Xanatos from Gargoyles and Armor Suit? I thought that's who this guy is.
But
Bastion
he made it out of Cable's arm, that was crazy.
Yes. And so, but no, I think it was a really awesome way to end it, though. Like, that finale was just like, holy crap, once you get there.
3-part finale. How can you not be?
Holy crap,
like,
yeah.
Wolverine's adamantium getting ripped out of him by Magneto. We thought we were getting Onslaught.
I think they definitely still have the seed sort of laid for that, and
because of the way that Xavier was in his mind, and it's supposed to be that Xavier gets trapped in a part of Xavier's consciousness gets trapped in that mind.
They definitely alluded to it as well, but it seems like they broke out of it. So I think they hinted at the idea of it being able to happen later, even though it's not quite there yet. Yeah. But it's certainly possible part of the mind's still there, and we just don't know it.
Correct.
And so,
yeah, so that'll be an interesting season 2, and then. So they get, speaking of that, they get out of that. Magneto and Xavier get out of that. That was a really cool emotional like journey for them. That was really, really interesting. Mm-hmm. And everybody's just fighting, and it's this battle going on between Sentinels and Bastion on Asteroid M, and it's just craziness. And then all of a sudden, Magneto wakes up and kaboom.
Yeah.
And kaboom. And
kaboom.
What do you think happened? Like, how do you think, what like, why? Like, why was that the effect? Was it Magneto? Could that have been Onslaught?
I don't have a why, because I have theories of where I think this is of what they're doing, which is really interesting, because I've been trying to dig into that some today.
Okay.
Because I guess we could go ahead and get into it, I guess. What I think is it's there. So we know this show has done a great job of adapting a lot of story arcs. Mm-hmm. Okay. And before we share into the future, I just want to talk about all the comic stuff that they've done so far in the show that we've talked about. Right. There are some big stories such as I mentioned it earlier, they did Inferno all in an episode, which is wild that they condensed all that into one episode. Mm-hmm. If you want to know how big of a story that is, that's an omnibus, like this thick, that's out there that you can buy. And so, but they've done a lot of other stories there that they, the thing Bastion came from. Operation Zero Tolerance.
OZT, yep.
What's also very interesting about that part is, from what I've heard, I haven't read the story myself, but I've heard that he's kind of like a bland character in the comics. So that was such a huge job of that. They made him into a likable, not likable, but like a villain that the audience can get behind of liking.
Yes.
Now, and having that good villain now. Something else I love, we see Magneto's different costume at the beginning in episode 2. When he's in the chains there, that's literally a cover from the comic where that story is based from.
Mm-hmm.
And I love seeing that similarity right there. We got Destruction of Genosha. That's from a big storyline called E is for Extinction. Like they're pulling all of this big stuff from different comics here. There's a lot of different issues that big issues that they just pulled all this stuff from, and I think they did a great job of showing it.
There's yeah, and you can definitely find all
there's
that
a
on the
lot
internet. So
here.
just Google X-Men 97 and comic influence and
Specifically here we have From the Ashes, where it talks about which is kind of like
Madeline
laying the
Pryor,
seeds
right?
for Madeline Pryor there. Life Death, which covers the whole Storm aspect story.
Oh, cool.
Ghosts, which covers parts with Cyclops' child there, and all that aspect of the show there.
Mm-hmm.
And so and other stuff with like Magneto. Like that's a big story arc right there.
Yeah.
And so all sorts of stuff there. And then another part with Cable and dealing with all that is Mutant Genesis. And so there's
Okay.
all sorts of big storylines that's tied in there that they pull all these bits and pieces from, reform their own. But the original show did this too, they just took bits and pieces and find a good way to adapt it while keeping the core of the story. Of course, a lot of those stories are scaled down massively. Some of them they spend a lot of time with, like Phoenix Saga, Dark Phoenix Saga. Those
Yeah, that was cool to see Phoenix at the end.
Yes, that was really
too.
cool.
And the way that Sinister died was hilarious, and the way Morph changed to him. But that what was crazy is that was down on Earth. All the people on the asteroid either went to ancient Egypt and met young Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Whoa. Or went to the far future and met young Cable.
Yeah. So I don't know much about what they're doing for the far future aspect. I feel like I'm still trying to piece this together, because point I was getting to is they adapt all these comics, but they're never one-on-one with the comics, right? It just carries a lot of ideas, keeps stuff that works for the show, reworks things to where it works really well for the show while keeping the core of what it's about. And that's what I think it makes the show great, is that they are able to keep the core aspects of what makes X-Men great, what makes those characters great, what makes all those stories work, keeping those certain elements. MCU does it as well. And so I think it does an amazing job of that. So point is I'm getting to, though, is there's a couple different big stories that I've been able to find here that I think that ending sort of teases.
Okay.
So we see that Cable is left behind on Earth.
Yep.
Or modern Earth, we should say.
Yep.
Modern day there. And that ties into a story called, oh gosh, I just had it here. But it's a story where it's about like Cable sort of by himself. While I think that story takes place in the future, I believe, I think they're going to sort of readapt that to be the sort of like more of a modern sort of take of it, maybe, from my understanding, from me just like quickly Googling that sort of story.
Talking about Bishop or Cable?
Cable.
Okay.
It's called Ascanison.
Okay, interesting.
And so but then the other thing is too is like I don't know like what they're trying to doing in the future, right? Because we've already had Days of Future Past.
Yeah, so
I don't know if they're gonna be doing another version of that, or if there's another big story there in the future.
We'll have to look into that, definitely.
But
and if you know anything about that, put it in the comments below, please.
Absolutely. And I think they did a really smart way to have like all this speculation, right? For figuring out what exactly is going on. Because the bigger thing that stood out to me was, well, what happened in the past? Because the young Apocalypse, before he was actually even named Apocalypse, he has a name that I don't remember right now. But that's what I'm very interested in, is that, because the only time we see a young Apocalypse, from what I was able to find today, is there is a 4-issue miniseries called The Rise of Apocalypse that details Apocalypse's rise to power. And we could get ties into that. But I also wonder, since there's a bunch of weird time stuff, the X-Men are gone from this Earth, I feel like they're kind of leading to now in season 2, one of the biggest X-Men stories there is, known as Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And so, however, it's sort of really interesting though there, because they don't explicitly sort of show exactly that, but I feel like that's where they're going, is Age of Apocalypse. Initially in the comics, they set it up to where it takes place in like a time temporal sort of Earth sort of thing going on. Like something happens, so then the world changes, but Earth remains same. They later then retconned it to take place on it in another universe.
Oh, so you think this is more multiversal than
I'm not
time
saying
related?
that. Well, what I think that they're going to do is I think they're going to change it to be a more time related story. Okay. So I think that we could possibly get more time jumping around to better fit.
Sure.
X-Men 97's version of Age of Apocalypse. Another thing that stands out to me too of why I think that's going to be Age of Apocalypse. Well, we see a lot of Apocalypse stuff.
Yeah.
There we got a little mid-credit scene.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty big there, you know, involving a little Apocalypse thing there and somebody coming back. But also knowing what's in Age of Apocalypse, we have a very famous version of Wolverine there. However, where we see Wolverine left, and that's another part that is crazy too. When Magneto completely screwed up Wolverine, that shot was taken directly from the comics as well, which is really cool.
But that was the Onslaught comic.
It was called Fatal Attraction, I believe, is what it came from. And so, what I also wonder is, since he's slowly regenerating, the story arc after that, it does involve Wolverine being a more feral Wolverine, where he only uses his bone claws for a little bit. I don't know if they're going to do exactly that.
Yeah, but how would they get the adamantium back in? Magneto put it back in him?
I think they're going to change it to where that Wolverine will have aspects of it, but combine it with the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine for when he comes back.
Okay.
Is what I think they're going to do. Because I think that's all going to build to an Age of Apocalypse somehow. I think they've laid the seeds there, and that's going to be kind of like their main end goal for next season while they're doing everything. Like next season, there's so many different ways they can go, right? Because you can have like just alone at the beginning. Well, you can have a whole episode set in the future, whole episode set in the past, whole episode with Cable left on Earth, right?
Yep.
I could very well them saying like the first episode, you're gonna get a little bit of everything, right? But then each episode after that, well, here's the Cable episode, here's the future episode, here's the past episode.
Think
and
then we'll get a longer season this time?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I think it's a good length though. I know there's kind of debates on like, you know, do you like these shorter seasons? Do you not? For me, I really like these shorter seasons because they don't have the excuse for having all the fluff. You know, you get just all the meat to the story.
Yeah. That's very true. Very true.
I don't think they're going to change that. And plus, I'm sure it's already, like I said, it's already written and they're working on it.
And I think, like, so we haven't talked about Roberto, who's the new character, Sunspot, or Solar Flare, or Sunspot, was that what his name was? I think what he said at the end.
I believe so, yeah.
And that, to me, it was, they only did, like, one side episode, one or 1.5 side episodes for him, and that was perfect, you know. So because he was a big part of the Mojo World, you know, episode. It was a lot of him finding himself, but also Jubilee finding herself. Is both of them finding themselves, you know, kind of. It was a good twofer episode for sure. So I think the length is good. I agree. I'll be very excited to see what happens. Age of Apocalypse sounds very, very doable. Again, the future thing, it's going to be something obviously with the war. That maybe they'll meet a young bishop as well.
There's so many different ways they can go there with that too. We just don't know yet, I feel like.
So that's cool. But just to wrap up then, I mean, before we give our quote, you know, silly little ratings that mean nothing, let's talk about the cool cameos though that could potentially lead to either new season. Okay.
No. I was just going to say, before we talk about the cameo specifically, I just want to talk about though that they did a great job this show. We had tiny bits of it in the original show, but honestly, not a lot. Only like a few times. But this show, in several episodes, we had it feel like as if it was actually part of a Marvel universe.
Yes, okay,
this 90s version of the Marvel universe. When we see the cameos, they didn't necessarily feel forced in. It was just like, it made it all feel like it was part of a universe, right? When we see Mutants at Genosha, it makes sense because we see other characters there, or the other bigger characters, it's because of where it ties into there.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, you can start saying that, you know, when they showed General Ross. and
Sure,
then they
yeah.
mention Hulk, and then they show Captain America, which I believe that interaction between Rogue and Cap is pulled from a comic as well directly.
Possibly, probably.
And then we got with Cap Iron Man in the finale, you know, and we saw Morph turn into so many different crazy characters.
I love seeing him as Mr. Fantastic there.
That was awesome. It threw me off. I'm like, what the hell's Mr. Oh, wait, it's Morph. I was so confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
He turns into a lot of cool characters.
A lot of cool characters. Too many for me to remember and list.
Right.
But then we, you know, of course, we saw Black Panther, which was the 90s looking Black Panther, which threw me off.
It's important they said T'Chaka and not T'Challa.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely was. It was King T'Chaka. Absolutely, because it's the 90s.
And in the 90s Black Panther look, too. I love that look.
It's a really
Black
cool
Panther
look.
too.
It was a really cool look, like stealthy look. And then the villains wise, we saw of course then we'll say Spider-Man, which the internet like went crazy over, and we also got Peter Parker and Mary Jane at the end looking at the TVs. I think that was Ace behind them with the sports bag.
Oh, I was not looking.
So I think that was Ace behind them.
I don't know.
Yeah. And then of course the villains wise, Baron Zemo.
Hold on. There's a couple big heroes you forgot. We had Daredevil there at the
that's
end.
right, Daredevil.
We also got
who were those? Oh, we got Omega Red. We got
we got Doctor Strange there at
that.
the end.
Yeah, you're right. Doing surgery.
He was being a surgeon,
Yeah.
which is an important part of his character that the MCU's forgotten about.
Yes.
And so, good for X-Men 97. They're remembering a big part of his character.
We got some other obscure characters that I didn't really recognize.
There's a couple. There's we got some mutants there.
Jessica Jones. We got. Wasn't that Jessica Jones with Daredevil?
Was it? I don't remember.
I think that was the Defenders that we got.
Maybe. We did see Silver Samurai a couple times.
Silver Samurai we saw, yep. And with Omega Red we saw what's his name's character from the Black Widow movie, protecting the Russian president with Omega Red. What's his name?
Oh, I wasn't sure who that dude is because I think you're talking about Red Guardian.
Yeah, I think it was.
I don't
Red
know
Guardian.
if that's who that was. To me, my first thought went to I don't know who it is, but my thought is that he was oh god, what's his name? He's an Iron Man villain. Oh my gosh,
Whiplash? No,
they were going to. Oh gosh, what is his name? It's gonna bother me, but it's a big Iron Man villain.
Okay, so anyway, tons
Crimson
of
Dynamo.
Oh yeah, Crimson Dynamo. Yeah, that's right. There was him. Yeah, that was him. You're right. Oh, I forgot about him. Yes. And then the big, who else did we get? We got that was Emma Frost, wasn't it? Did we get Emma Frost?
I don't recall.
I think we got Emma Frost. She was holding like an icicle. That's why I think it was her. So again, so many cameos, and then of course my favorite one were the villain ones, where we got Baron Zemo and Doctor Doom.
Yes.
That was
I loved
great.
having Doom there.
Doom was insane. I couldn't believe that means that we're gonna get another Fantastic Four animated series.
Please,
that would be amazing.
I know people want Spider-Man, and that's far more likely of happening first, probably. But
no, less because Sony has to agree to that one.
I think Marvel can do it because of
they hold the animated rights still.
Yeah. I think they can do it
Okay. All right.
Side.
So cool. So that's expectations of the future. Spider-Man series, possibly an Avengers series.
What I want is Fantastic Four.
I want Fantastic Four too. I remember watching the Fantastic Four series as a kid.
I want to watch that.
It's clobbering time. That's where I first heard that, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
And then they did a Silver Surfer show.
Yes, yeah, yep. So,
very interesting.
But yeah, that Fantastic Four cartoon from I guess it was late '80s, early '90s.
Is the '90s?
Is the '90s? Okay, I couldn't remember. It all blurred together as a kid. So, loved that show. And loved this show. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I definitely the only things it missed to me was I want more. So I guess I'm not gonna get. I can't. It's hard for me to give something 10s out of 10. So I will say 9.5 around there.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like for me, my only, if any problems, is just really minor nitpicks, right? So,
True.
and so for me, and it's just it carries on one of the best ever cartoons I think that there ever is, and I think it keeps it up, and in several ways, I think improving upon it. Especially now, while they did it back then, they did a better job of this being serialized and continuing, one big
Yeah.
story. And so, um, I think like when I say this, I do mean it, and like a couple of my friends that just haven't watched it are like, "No, you're crazy," or saying I'm crazy. But I really do think it is one of the best comic book shows there is. I think it's up there with the quality of Invincible. I'm not going to say one's better than the other yet because I want them to like sit and figure it out. But like Invincible, that I have called the best animated comic book show. I think it's right up there, if not possibly better. It's hard to say, right? Because we're going here from the hype of it. What is it? Recency bias is absolutely a thing, so I can't for sure say if I like one or more than not. And so, but I can say for sure though, I do think it is one of the best Marvel shows ever. Period. Honestly, possibly my favorite Marvel show there is. Just
ooh, Loki was very good.
I like it more than Loki.
Okay,
like because for me, it keeps that classic comic feel. It continues the 90s show in such a fantastic way. You have such amazing animation. I absolutely loved it to where it's like, what more do you want from a Marvel show? But having it feel like it's part of an actual Marvel universe. So I absolutely loved it.
I guess I'm also a little angry. Little angry
that there's no Gambit.
Little angry. Where's my Gambit?
But yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. And so like I said, I really
give it a 10?
If it's not a 10, it's a 9.5. So
yeah, okay, yeah, there we go. So we're pretty much 9.5 is what we'll settle on, I think, perfectly, because we both said 9.5. So we'll say 9.5 out of 10 for this amazing show. So in other words, give us more. Give us more.
Give me more because it's so freaking good.
Now, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Make sure that you do share this video, right here. Share the channel, share the video, sub, and all that stuff. Click the bell, get notifications, subscribe. You know the deal. But share it all, and don't forget to check out our Linktree or Twitch. We stream a lot of games over there pretty much almost every day now. So go check us out, and we'll see you all later. Say goodbye, Spencer.
Bye.
Leave a comment below if you loved the show.
Yeah, do that.